Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. If you can see my face and or hear my voice, once again it is time for the worst 120 minutes or so in all of sports podcasting. That's right, I'm Mike, and we are back with another episode of the Too Many Guys Soccer Show. I am joined, as I am always, by my producer, my partner in all things podcasting, producer Stead. The office is coming together nicely.
Yeah, we've actually switched. We had plans to build this little room in the house, but my Wi-Fi just doesn't seem to work up there, and the vents weren't really going well, and so I was like, And then of course you guys, you've yet to meet, but you will sooner or later. Mike, you know my wife well. When she's always forward thinking. So she's like, well, if you're not liking this office that much, maybe we should look for another house. So I was like, okay, man.
Yep.
So we're not yet, but don't be surprised if not in 2 years we are back in the market looking for another house.
Hey. Yeah, that is Lisa.
That's Lisa,
yeah. Yeah. You recently returned from a birthday trip to see a good friend of ours who's joining us.
Absolutely.
G. Now, first and foremost, G, for some strange reason, you and I have a whole entire University of Tennessee thing going on this evening. I'm not 100% sure the Vols did win. My wife went to University of Tennessee for grad school. I think you visited the campus over the summer. Other than that, that's about our only connections to the Volunteers. But hey, Rocky top this.
Yeah, I agree. It's a beautiful campus and one of my favorite SEC teams right now. So it's been kind of a magical university for a long, long, long time since my early 20s. So I had a good opportunity to go this summer. I took my chance to go out there and fell in love with it. So I kind of had to rock the Rocky Top hat, and good to see that you got wearing the orange too. And one of my least favorite weekends that's coming up is that international weekend. So got to rock the old Missouri, and hopefully they beat, I think, Macedonia or some kind of crazy team they'll probably lose to because God only knows why. But forget about it. And one thing I was actually thinking about too, just before you guys came on, is I remember a couple of years ago, I used to be at the tail end of the show with Arsenal doing, now Arsenal's doing quite well, and here I am kind of first go around. So life is good right now. I can't complain.
Well, that's what happens. The minute that you move to the top of the show, Arsenal starts doing well. So, yeah, we'll get into some Arsenal talk. We'll recap the Arsenal Man U game. Instead, we're going to get a chance to talk to Celtic Cam a little bit later on. We'll get his take on the Haps in the land of enchantment that is Scotland, but most especially, we're going to do a quick preview. Not a quick preview because there's not going to be anything quick about it, but we are going to preview the Rugby World Cup, which starts on Friday. And then we've got the Professor Matt and Chelsea Mike show to round out. Unfortunately, no surprise guests, hip hop DJs, or anything like that. It's just us today. We are hoping at some point in the near future to welcome back our good friend Byron Robb, whom we have not spoken to probably in at least 8 or 9 different vacations. But he has a fantasy football draft this evening, so he could not join us. Priorities.
Hey, our draft is tomorrow, so
our draft is let's go auto draft. Yeah, we'll do that. I am going to participate in this Too Many Guys fantasy football league, so somebody's got to hold up the bottom, and that is my goal.
I don't know, man. G's going to give you a hard bargain there, brother.
Last 2 years, I don't know why.
Hey.
I tried to do a sub, it won't let me. I go, you know what? Screw it. Here I am, 115 and 2-14 the last couple of years. I am the worst at it. So game on for last place.
Well, I'm gonna send you text to remind you, and if you can't get them, I'll do it for you. Okay.
The Too Many Guys League is the only one where the winner is actually the person who finishes last.
And I really don't feel like a winner that time or last 2 years. So, all right, if you say so, man.
So, as I mentioned at the top of the show, Stead, you spent your birthday down in New Orleans visiting G. It sounds like a good time was had by all. I saw some pictures. All I can say is that y'all both look like you survived in one piece. So,
Hey, look,
yeah.
my heart goes out to the people in New Orleans because the one difference I noticed is, I am not that far away, and I noticed that our high temperature was about 1 or 2 degrees off. High at the times were about 97, 99 around here, 100 and 102 up down in New Orleans. The difference was, though, the lows where I am were back to 73, 74, and the low in New Orleans was about 86 degrees, which blew my mind. Waking up and going out for my tour, my bus was picking me up at 8:30 in the morning, and it was already 89 degrees outside and humid, was a new experience for me. And I've lived in the southern tropical climates my whole life. That took some getting used to. I was like, oh, okay, it's supposed to be 75 degrees out, and it's 89 degrees. Ooh, that's got to be tough.
Yeah, I think we are all in the midst of some warm weather. I'm not going to complain too much because yes, it was around 100 this whole entire weekend, and it was humid in
It
DC.
hasn't
But
been down here. It's so funny. In Atlanta, we're like 10 degrees cooler. If that, more than that. It's like 88. It was beautiful.
I'm not going to complain about it because I know how hot it gets both in Atlanta and New Orleans being below sea level. That humidity just has no place to go.
That thing is just sitting on your shoulder like this.
Mm-hmm. It's like that 300-pound elephant just leaning on you, like impressive.
Yep.
And the mosquitoes.
Yeah.
The mosquitoes. Yeah, I've never been to New Orleans in the summer, but we were definitely down at Fort Polk in Louisiana once during the winter or during the summer, and it was hot. I mean, and the mosquitoes sounded like B-52s taking off. A giant mosquito came and grabbed one of the guys out of the foxhole where we were in for our drill. We haven't seen him since.
Yeah. I always say I never knew
and this
that
was this was 2000.
Yeah. I never knew insects had shadows. In New Orleans, you could just see it on your feet, shadows. Like, what is that? It's a mosquito. What? It's got a shadow. That's a mosquito.
It's a mosquito with a shadow that looks like a pterodactyl.
Yeah.
It's not for the faint of heart. Only the hardy survive down here in the summertime. Most people leave because of that reason. The shadows and the pterodactyls, yeah, it's not worth it. You got to leave.
So, man, before we get started talking about it, because I am going to delay the inevitable as long as possible to hope that I can make this segment last until segment 2 and not have to acknowledge what actually happened on Sunday. We had our first forward motion stead in this continuing saga that is Spanish women's football. World Cup winning coach Jorge Vilba relieved of his duties. Some might say, well, that's kind of interesting that they got rid of him and not Victor Rubiales, who was the one who was guilty of the thing. But also remember, this is the same guy who, in the run-up into the World Cup, 15 of his players threatened to boycott the team because of his treatment of his squad. And wouldn't you know that Victor Rubiales stood up for him? So, I guess that's forward motion, but all of this is now going to be for naught if they don't get rid of the guy at the top. But who in the Spanish Football Federation can actually fire the president of the Spanish Football Federation? So, Steady, you got any thoughts on this whole entire mess?
The whole mess is sickening, and it just needs to be resolved immediately. This is only going to be worse, and yet I just feel really bad for the people who won the World Cup, because now all of a sudden you're marred in controversy and no one's going to be talking about your play on the field, which is where you should be. I'm not going to profess that I know a lot about Spanish culture, but this just makes Spain has made some cultural insensitivities often in the world of sport over the past 2 decades. And at least a lot of times those were directed towards those who were outwardly from Spain, so who were not of Spanish descent, so people who were from the Far East or from Africa. Spain has been not the most politically correct, I'll say, and this is coming from somebody who himself is not the most politically correct. But and now this is happening inside their own borders, which is actually, you know, equally as bad, if not worse. It's Spain just needs to open up the closet doors, clean out a little bit, and really just do a long look in the mirror and say, this is how we're being perceived by the rest of the world in light of our women being world champions. This couldn't look worse for them right now. They need to clean house.
It's such a shame that this whole entire thing that should be about celebrating the accomplishment of the women who won the World Cup has turned into this farcical situation involving just basically male chauvinism in an attempt to justify ridiculous actions. And, you know, there is no need.
Yeah, I mean, look, Spanish men, these men, say sorry, apologize. We messed up. We really shouldn't have done that. That was wrong. We apologize for that.
I wonder what would have been like, and I don't know if this would have gone far enough, but if he had reached out in the immediate aftermath and said, you know what, mea culpa. I called up Jenny Hermosa and I apologized and said, you know what, that was really, really bad. I'm really sorry. I got caught up in the moment and I did something off the cuff, and I know that was wrong and I intruded on your personal space and I really shouldn't have done that. And I hope that you can forgive me. I'm going to become a better person, and I'm going to go out in public and say the same exact thing where this would have ended up now. And I'm not saying that was enough, and I'm not saying that would have justified anything that he did, but it would have put the attention back on to them. Exactly. Instead of doing what he did, which was to say, I didn't do anything wrong.
Exactly.
You know, this was perfectly fine, you know, and just doubling down and then threatening to sue her and this campaign. Like, yo, dude, I messed up. Yeah. Even adults, even people
just
in charge.
Say sorry.
I
just don't understand.
Really
it
bad.
It was. You're exactly right. And I just don't understand why in so many places it is so difficult to simply apologize for your actions. Now, yes, there are factions that have made the act of apologizing less and less and less acceptable, which I think is equally as bad. But also we're hearing apologies where they say, I'm sorry that you felt that way. Well, that's not an apology. That's not taking any responsibility. Yeah, just take some responsibility and apologize. If you own it, then you owned it. And there's nothing anyone can do. And if the federation, if you own it, the federation can say, look, he apologized. He owned that he made a mistake, but we still fully support the work he's done. Look what happened. He's put together a situation where we won the World Cup when Spain were even on the map 5 years ago. And then everyone would be like, well, okay. And then the vast majority of people would have been back to, and Mike, is just what you were saying. They would have gone back to celebrating what was a fantastic tournament. It's a shame. It's a real shame. And, you know, get your head out of your ass and just say sorry.
You want to chime in on this?
It just seems like it's an old machismo, old way of thinking that if he does apologize, it's people pressuring him to apologize. For him and his soul, down to his core, he feels like he did nothing wrong. And that's very old school, like grandparent kind of thinking. It's sad. It really is that he doesn't see the bigger picture of what he's done. And especially like you guys just said, it kind of takes what they've done for 5 years, the grassroots, the building of the foundation of women's soccer, and it kind of now is overshadowed by this kind of this awful old way of thinking, not even sincere in any kind of apology. So if I was the teammates, if I was the players of the team, I'd like, yeah, I'm going to boycott too. If he's in charge and these other guys who are this old way of thinking, for us to move forward, and we are moving forward, we're not going to play for them. And I give credit to all the females, standing up for themselves, because we just talked about a couple weeks ago how awesome this is, how cool it is that a country outside of Germany and France and in England, the United States have won the World Cup. We never saw this, and for how they did it, we get such praise. And now we're like, okay, now, let's talk about this black guy that they just got hit with. So it's a shame, it really is, and it sucks. It really happened to a young, really talented team.
And this is something that could have been handled internally, because this is an internal problem. This isn't between Spain and Norway or Spain and Germany or Spain and the United States. This is between Spain and Spain. They could have handled this internally and had this basically gone away weeks ago, and they didn't. And now they're the ones with egg on their face, and it's front page news that now you're seeing a coach that I would say the vast majority of people in the Western Hemisphere don't even know the name or what he did. He's now being talked about in a very negative way. And that is even worse. And it's their own fault that this is happening.
But you can easily make the argument, like, based on the reaction of the players to the team, he shouldn't have even been there in the first place.
Yes, agreed. Absolutely.
And one might easily make the argument, like, this just tells you how good that Spanish team was, that they won almost. Now it's becoming more known to us. They won in spite of their coach, not because of their coach. Like, he might have made a couple of tactical decisions, but it was clear that they were going to do this for themselves, not anybody else. And I gotta give them credit. It's just this bunker mentality that they had to have had to go in there and do that, where you see how we're able to piece together now just how little internal support that they've gotten at any point really in the last 5 years, where it's like, we're not going to support your development. We're not going to give you the resources that you need. We've talked about the fact that there is no real grassroots youth development, that they just kind of are what they are because of the players that they have, not because of anything that they did. So the Spanish women won. The best way I can summarize this is to say it seems more and more like the Spanish women were able to win the World Cup in spite of Spain, not because of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's, again, the people who you don't want to suffer the consequences the most are the ones suffering the consequences the most, and those are the players on the squad. Mm-hmm. And, they should not be in a situation where they feel like they have to boycott their own national team in order to get a measure of respect from their own federation. It's really,
this should be
painful.
About this next cup, this week window, this September October timeframe should be about them taking a victory lap around Spain,
absolutely
celebrating their accomplishments, playing a couple of victory tour friendlies, and getting the warmth and the welcome that they have. They just haven't been able to enjoy any bit of what they accomplished as they get ready. Because remember, they've got September, October, and then, for all intents and purposes, they've got to start getting ready to go to the Olympics, which start in what is 6-8 months.
Yeah,
8 months.
And the fact that they're going right next door, which from a media perspective means the frenzy's just going to follow them there very easily, and it's going to be even more pronounced. And this is going to be all that they're going to talk about. And we all know, especially the English press, we know how they are. They love to just drag things through the mud, and it's just going to continue. And it's again, it's the players who are the ones that are going to suffer. And I really hope that the Spanish fans and the Spanish citizens turn out in droves to support that team. I really hope they do, because that's what they really need, is the support of the citizenry of the country to say, we are behind you. Because I guarantee a lot of them probably don't feel that way, which is even worse. So, I mean, look, take a page from the United States. We may not pay as much attention to American women's soccer as probably we should all the time, but when the time is around, which means during the World Cup and during the Olympics, the support is clearly there from a fan perspective.
And speaking of that, though, and this might be completely anecdotal and environmental, because of where I am, because of the region that I'm in, because of the county that I'm in, because of the locality that I am in, and it's kind of bend. I am starting to hear more and more about, professional women's soccer in ways that I haven't before. Like
Mhm.
for the first time, I actually saw a couple of kids wearing Washington Spirit jerseys.
Hmm.
And I actually had to do a double take because I can't recall ever seeing one. And I was looking at the kids and I was like, huh, that's an interesting club. Oh, wait, no, that's not a club jersey because most club jerseys don't have sponsors.
Mhm.
Um, oh, that's an actual Washington Spirit jersey. Uh, I who do
Yeah.
the soccer show and I who do a podcast and one where we talk extensively about soccer, fashion, and jerseys, never actually seen one of those.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Sparky. You taught me something today.
Well, I know Atlanta's trying to get an NWSL team. They've been trying for a few years now, so we'll see if we can get some expansion down here as well.
Yeah, I just hope that they don't go the route of some of the other professional women's soccer leagues and expand or give control to the wrong people too fast
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and have it end up being a complete and utter disaster. Because if you remember the what was it, the NAS, no, not the NASL, the NSL, whatever the precursor was
Yes.
to this version of the NWSL, whatever that precursor was around the time of the previous World Cup,
Mm-hmm.
looked like it had everything going for it
Mm-hmm.
until a couple of bad owners and a couple of bad financial decisions,
Yeah.
and the bottom just fell out of it completely.
Yeah.
And I don't think, unfortunately, and this is no condemnation of women's soccer or anything, I just don't think that we can handle another failed women's professional soccer league and
No.
feel the need to start another one. I just think that if this one goes down, there's just going to be a lack of corporate interest to try and start it again.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing that if this league does somehow fold completely, it's going to be a decade before you see anything happen again. I believe, and it's going to take two more World Cup victories for it to actually happen.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
I
and it's
mean,
going to be.
yeah, because we don't have. I mean, sorry, MLS does not have the tools to support a women's league. That we can't have a WNBA for soccer because
Yeah.
it just can't. I mean, it can't. Yeah.
And the NBA, the MLS owners are too concerned about making their own money off of their own project to be willing to put any of their own money into supporting a league the way that the WNBA. And full credit to the WNBA for
Yeah,
actually doing that, because that is
absolutely.
why there is, after what, 20 plus years
They're
of
still
viable,
playing.
they're still playing. It's still
Mm-hmm.
something that
Still
resembles a
playing.
viable
Mm-hmm.
women's professional basketball league
Mm-hmm.
in the country, is mostly because of that decision. And
Yes.
most people will forget that in, what was it, 98, when that league was launched, they launched a rival league, the ABL.
Yes.
Most of the best players from that team did not play in the WNBA. They
No, they
actually
did not.
played in the ABL.
Yeah, the ABL had higher salaries as well, and they were situated in smaller markets with smaller stadiums to hope that so they can kind of pack things out pretty good, and it worked
They were,
for. I remember like Dawn Staley was playing there and a couple of other big
yeah,
name
she was
players.
playing in
Yeah,
Philadelphia.
yeah.
And I think one of the reasons why that I sometimes think one of the reasons why Philadelphia still doesn't have a WNBA team is because of that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm serious. You've put a WAB team in the Mohegan Sun in Connecticut. Now I
Mm-hmm.
get it. Stores is huge on women's basketball.
Oh, yeah,
It is
absolutely. Yeah,
religion.
it is absolutely.
But you've made some really strange decisions that I don't understand, and you've
Mm-hmm.
never thought about putting a WNBA team in Philly.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the
Mm-hmm.
largest media markets. Actually, it's probably the single largest media market that doesn't
That
have a
doesn't have
WNBA
one.
team.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, moving on from this, it is now September 5th, which means that we are 5 days past the close of the transfer window. Which, guys, I gotta be honest. I felt like transfer deadline day kind of went out with a whimper.
It did go out with a whimper. It totally went out with a
I'm
whimper.
wondering.
Nothing
I'm wondering if
happened.
I'm wondering if I'm the only one that felt like it. Like, for once there weren't. I didn't see a lot of the sightings of. Nobody was talking about sightings of Mbappe in a red limo in Merseyside. Oh no, he's checking his bags in London. No, he's actually in Madrid. Like that kind of drama was missing largely. And even though this will go down as the most expensive transfer window ever, mostly thanks to Chelsea, it's kind of like ended. And
Yeah.
most teams are doing their business earlier in the window to get these deals done. And by most teams, the well-run teams that don't wear red and are based on the Old Trafford part of Manchester, try and get most of their deals done, so they're not trying to scramble around and give Johnny Evans a contract on transfer deadline day because they realized all of a sudden that they don't actually have any healthy center backs. But and it makes sense. If you know what your budget is, go out, you've lined these up, you know what you're doing. You've got a month in between June and the beginning of July to figure this stuff out. Go out, get it done, and we save these things. But I do miss a wheeler dealer Harry Redknapp, who was always good for transfer deadline day surprise. My man could buy and sell Christopher Samba 3 times in one day.
It was totally underwhelming. I was disappointed by that, especially considering that, there have been some injuries that have occurred in the first few games of the season. You thought there might be some dabbling going on, and they were like, well, okay, we'll just, or maybe because we spent all our money, it could be that too. But I didn't feel like things were heavier earlier in the transfer market, but it probably were. But because you saw, it's almost like once the Mbappe saga kind of fell apart, that just seemed to and caused quite a few things to fall. And you had, kind of had what Saudi Arabia was doing, what China was doing, where they kind of came in and made and splashed a lot of money around that just wasn't getting splashed around before. So, I know personally, I was just waiting for the notification of Mo Salah leaving, and it didn't happen. So after that point, it was like, okay, I guess how much is going on?
You still got 2 more days. You still got 2 more days, and we'll talk to Professor Matt when he comes on. There's still the rumor that the Saudi Arabian League is going to put together a world record bid for 31-year-old Mo Salah. We'll be interested to see how that happens. G, your thoughts on transfer deadline day?
I agree with you guys. This kind of came and went, but I think the front end of it was very heavy. Like you said, Mike, those top teams, they want to get their plays in right away to get into that feel of the team right away, to get into the system right away. So maybe that was the initiative from a lot of these teams is sign them, see what we have, and get some of those B teamers at the very end, kind of fill in the gaps where we need. But there's not a lot of B teamers that were being signed right now. So like you said, it just kind of came and went, kind of oh-hum. Even the announcers on the weekend didn't really hear anything like, oh, this team needs this level days or this signing. They didn't really announce anything like that. So it was kind of just out of sight, out of mind kind of concept. So, all right, until next window, until the winter time, then we'll see what happens the next couple months. But until then, yeah, it's kind of an oh-hum kind of thing.
Yeah, Fabrizio Romano was awfully quiet, which is surprising.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, even then, there aren't a whole lot of residual rumors going around with regards to this player moving in January, this team reinforcing in January. Like, I didn't see a lot of residual rumors. Oh, geez, I almost successfully did it. Nah, we have to talk about it. The big game on Sunday was Manchester United going to the Emirates and doing what Manchester United does on the road, especially when they go and play a team above them in the table. Look like they might compete for a while and then lose 3-1.
So now
I didn't know. I thought it was an interesting game at times. I thought both teams looked great. At times, I could see where both teams were struggling. It had a great minute where you saw 2 goals scored, one unbelievable piece of individual brilliance by Marcus Rashford, which makes you remember just how lethal he can be at any given point in time and almost creating something out of nothing. Arsenal hits back. on a quick counterattack, almost from the restart. They get their goal. As the game went on, I thought both teams had a lot of chances. Somebody's going to have to tell me what Kai Havertz does other than fall over.
Don't ask us. We have no idea.
Sky the ball.
Take somewhere. Runs.
I mean, I knew once. I knew that United were in trouble once Harry Maguire came on.
Oh my God! I'm sorry about that, but keep going. All the Arsenal bar was cheering. We're celebrating like, yes, he's coming on. Our savior's coming on. And sure enough,
look what happens when Declan Rice scores his goal. Guess who wasn't moving? And look, anytime you end a game, if you're Manchester United, where Harry Maguire and Johnny Evans are your center back pairing, that's pretty much saying I want to lose. I'm comfortable losing 4-1. We can debate the penalty that wasn't on Kai Havertz. I think that let me put it this way. I don't think that was a foul upon replay. I think that Wan-Bissaka never made contact with him and he just went over and he was going over already. I think the VAR review on that occasion was correct. I disagree with the offsides on Alejandro Garnacho. I thought that was onside, but they're going to say the lines and this did that, and part of his shoulder was off. I don't think that you can get that one. I am not going to call foul on Declan Rice's goal because I think if there was a foul in that play, that foul was committed by Johnny Evans, not on Johnny Evans, so that goal should have stood. And the last one is just a case of a quick move after Manchester United piles everybody into the back. We've seen that happen to them. Yeah, we've seen that happen to them a couple of times. Most notably, I can think of a game either I think 2 years ago against Liverpool, where the game ended up 2-0, and Mo Salah scored one of them in the 90th minute when Man United had everybody forward and they put it again. So United perspective being, hey, we are still where we are still not really good on the road. We have not gotten into this season. We can talk about the Jadon Sancho situation either later or at a different time on a different show, because it's hard to create a situation for a player who wasn't in the team, but then becomes one because of a spat with the coach. But the only good thing that I can see out of that for United was, although he did not appear on the score sheet, Rasmus Højlund brought something to them that I do not think that they have had since Zlatan Ibrahimovic left, which is just a strong presence at center forward who is going to cause problems for defenders who will now not just be able to outmuscle them, because pretty much since Zlatan left, the center forward spot has by and large been just a black hole. Like, Anthony Martial was less than anonymous. It was like playing 11 on 10 most of the game with how little I felt like he contributed in any offensive capacity. So, Jay, I'm going to give you a chance to weigh in because you've got your
Actually, it's not 11 versus 10. I would say 10 on 10 because where was Kai for Arsenal? So he kind of gets lost in there too. So it's kind of a 10 versus 10 kind of game. So who are going to outlast each other? But yeah, every team's going to have those kind of lost players and stuff like that. But on my end, it was just kind of good to see the Arsenal bounce back real quick after a goal. They didn't hang their heads like we seen a couple of years ago. We see this young men now fight and have a little thirst. Like, this is our home. We're really good. We're going to protect that image that is on us right now. The fight, everything, the possession that they had early on the first half was unbelievable. The way they controlled the game, the way they went actually left side and right side and back left side. They didn't really focus on the right side too much. So there's a lot of positive that came out of this. And like I said, when Harry came on, half the bar was Man U, half the bar that I go to was Arsenal. And all the Arsenal fans were cheering, and all the Man U fans were like saying, "No, no, no, this is the worst sub ever." We all know when he plays, something's good is going to happen for the other team. And sure enough, he was just kind of a little lackadaisical to get to a spot where he could block the ball. It's great to see this little comeback, and a lot of arrogant, cocky kind of Man U players at the bar. I'm sorry, fans at the bar were cheering and were coming to our side, hugging us Arsenal fans. And when they scored, we all looked at them and said, "We get a hug," and they kind of put their heads in shame. So these young fans need to understand that soccer can turn real quick like that. You can be cheering 1 minute, and the next minute you're hitting a head in the sand. So wait until the very final whistle to blow, because yes, you can talk all the crap, but right now Arsenal's a hot team. Do not count them out to the very last second.
I'm a quote a friend of mine when he says that football is an evil mistress, and she very well can be, because I was basically thought I like they blew it again, because I was really concerned with how far Arsenal was pushing players up, and they just kind of lost fear of a counterattack, which you saw Man U was playing that game quite frequently, where they were just going, they'll get the ball eventually. Arsenal's going to give up the ball because Man U, like it or not, they have good players on that team. They're going to get possession of the ball, and you're susceptible to a counter when the only person you have back is maybe not the quickest player in the world. So, it was nerve-wracking to see, just from a fan perspective, but also I still think that Arsenal has a lot to do. They have a lot to be concerned about if they're actually going to try and win something this year, because again, they were a toenail from losing that game 2-1. And there was contact on Havertz. There was. Now, I do believe that Havertz was already going down before, but when you have two players convening on you like that, it often happens, and I've seen penalties given for way, way less, very, very frequently. So while we have VAR there to say that wasn't a penalty, if we get rid of VAR, that score would have been 2-2. I'll put it that way. So even then, I think the playing field is relatively even then. I think concerning me from Man U's perspective goes, I've just never seen them play so passively as far as waiting for the other team to give up the ball. That was a little concerning, and I saw that come a bit more frequently, because again, I don't see it yet with Arsenal. I just don't see it yet. I don't see that team that last year I saw when I was like, I'm just gonna not say anything, because I was nervous, because I was actually really enjoying what I was seeing. I'm seeing a team that's got work to do. I saw that, I'm glad Gabriel finally played, because I don't know. And Arteta, why is Havertz starting? He should not be starting. Havertz should not be starting these games, especially considering the fact that he is a new player on the squad. Even if he's been there for quite a few weeks, he's a new player on the squad. You have depth on the bench in that position. Bring him off the bench, let him kind of integrate his way into the game that way and be a little bit fresher. But he threw him in there right away. I don't agree with it. And they're lucky that it hasn't bitten them too bad yet. They could have easily lost to Fulham. They could have we watched that game. We were both sitting there like, this isn't a good. They could have easily lost that game. So they do have some work to do.
But they're winning, though. They're getting the 3
They're getting the W. They're getting the W. And look, all I'm saying is this: Rasmus Højlund. I saw the same thing. I saw a big body that could eat up a lot of space, but I saw Nicholas Bentner, and I really hope. I mean, from a Man U fan perspective, I really hope that's not who he is. But the guy scored 9 goals in Italy, and I know Italy's a different league; they don't score quite as much over there. So hopefully he can be a better center forward from a Man U perspective. But he does give something that I do agree that Man U has not had in a while. Having a big body, because look, I've said it to this day, because if you get a guy that's, Olivier Giroud, then you got a deal. Because, I'll take Olivier Giroud 8 days a week. And so I actually was really interested to see him coming in going, okay, this is, they spent a lot of money on him, but he's kind of an unknown player from a bigger perspective, but I'm actually very curious to see how he does, because I actually think players like him have a very high ceiling and a very low floor.
Yeah, but watch out for him, They might do a Man City kind of thing with him. A tall body like a Holland kind of guy. You have Fernandez who just give him the right balls every time. Use his big guys and just give him a header. Like it's not a bad recipe. It's worked for Man City. So maybe
big body center forwards. I like them. I do.
I miss Giroud. I really wish he was still on our
side. I do too.
Sometimes though, sometimes going route one works. Like that's why teams play it.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you have a 6'4", 6'5" center forward, sometimes the best thing in the world to do is just aim balls at his head and head him in. Yep. And we saw even with a non-functional center forward in Wout Weghorst last year for Man United for those months. He was able to clear out some space for some of the other players, so we'll have to see. But that's all the news that's fit to print on that subject until after the winter break.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so G, we are going to turn our attention in a little bit of a different direction. Welcome on Celtic Cam. But it was good to chat with you, good to catch up with you, and we hope to see you again next week.
Likewise, but don't forget, who's that the real tall, lanky Tim Crouch? 6'7".
Peter Crouch.
He was awful. But anytime he's in the air, he's scoring at least one goal per game.
Peter Crouch had great feet. Peter Crouch had great feet. I'm a mark for Peter Crouch, man. He had great feet.
Peter Crouch, he made a career out of doing that, and he had a very long professional career. Maybe not a Liverpool player.
Yeah.
But, he had a pretty serviceable Premier League career on him just being in top. I don't see...
Look at his goal scoring record for England, too. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I don't see Højlund being that because Peter Crouch's problem was he was tall and very lanky and skinny.
He was skinny.
Højlund is not that. He's not a finesse player. He's definitely going to be, from what I saw, a little bit more of a physical type of presence with some tactical stuff left in. Yeah. So we'll see that.
He's eating his eggs and bacon. Højlund is.
Yeah, that's a big boy.
Good to see you, G.
We are going to go from New Orleans to that land of fantasy and enchantment that is Scotland, and welcome our good friend Celtic Cam in to talk a little bit about the SPFL, but most importantly, to talk about help us preview the Rugby World Cup. So let's start and knock this one out quickly. A couple of things. It was the first Old Firm of the season this weekend. Celtic and Brendan Rodgers, I can't say have gotten off to the world's greatest start. Getting knocked out of the League Cup already, a draw against Livingston. But hey, a win at Ibrox will forgive a lot of sins. It was a game. It was a weird game to me. I felt Cam like Celtic controlled a fair amount of it, even though they were on the road. Rangers definitely had chances, especially Celtic was scrambling late on, and I felt like Celtic could have done what Arsenal did to Man United and catch another one on the break. Joe Hart had to make a couple of really, really great saves, but it was Celtic who capitalized on what was a pretty tight affair in the first half at the perfect time. I mean, like right on the whistle to halftime. And it was Kyogo with the goal, with the game's only goal. Celtic run off, and Brendan Rodgers gets yet another Old Firm win.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I definitely want to give, as you already did, Joe Hart some credit for those saves he made in the second half. Fantastic. I still think Joe Hart has playing time in him, and I think that just proved it. I think anytime you're a goalie in the Old Firm, you've got something to prove, and I think he did. So I'm hoping that kind of quieted some of the people that aren't necessarily backing him. But no, I think your analysis, I think, is absolutely right. Kyogo's goal couldn't have come at a better time. before the second half, as you said, right on the whistle, basically. And it was a decent goal, actually. It looks kind of beautiful. But there were some standout players. Liam Scales, who has not been up to his full potential, played absolutely fantastically. I thought he was an absolutely just prime player during the game. But you're absolutely right in that Rangers were making that comeback at the end. They were really pushing hard, really trying to break our back line. Had a few close chances, as did we. I think we actually squandered a few. So I think Rogers has some tidying up to do in terms of our offense. But we also got to see some of the newer players come in and pull their weight, as well as some of the older players that we bought last season that haven't had such an impact. Bernabe, he came in, played a bit, was half decent. Abada, who necessarily the end of last season didn't get a lot of playing time, I thought was really good. So yeah, overall happy with the result, obviously, but I think there's definitely some work to do for sure for Celtic.
We talked about how transfer deadline day kind of, for a lot of ways, ended with a dull thud, but I know Celtic did some business at the end of the window that some people were excited about. Who was the player that you guys brought in?
One of the big ones, I think, his name's Palma. He's a Honduran player. He actually was encouraged by trying to remember his name. That'll come back to me later. But he was one of our big pickups. Really good player. I think we got him for about £6 million. And who else was a big pickup? I'm just gonna try to pronounce his name. I think it was Scandinavian player, put it that way. But we've strengthened our midfield, our attacking wingers. We've got wingers just left, right, and center. I think we've got about 8 of them now in the books for the first team. So hopefully that's a sign that Rogers has, a plan to really utilize these wingers, which I will say during the Old Firm game, we did see a lot of play up and down the wings. So I do think that there is a plan in place for all these wingers that are getting brought in, and the ones that we currently have, Abada, Palma, who we brought in, some other guys. So, yeah, I'm excited to see this, what Rogers has in store.
So the Champions League group stage came up over late last week. Celtic get drawn into a group with Feyenoord, the Dutch champs, Atletico Madrid, who finished third in La Liga, and Lazio, who finished second in Serie A in Celtic. Fortunately for you, that was last season, and none of the 3 of them have gotten off to really great starts this season. But those are going to make for some very interesting trips. I think you could say they avoided the worst of it by staying out of a group with the likes of Bayern or Manchester City or PSG, and getting Feyenoord, who would probably be the lowest of the pot 1. Of course, Atleti in pot 2 is going to be a really tough one, as is Lazio, who tend to actually play a little bit better in Serie A than they do in the Champions League. So last year it was 2 points. The story has been Celtic's failure to win on the road. So, if the hope is again to be playing some sort of European football after the new year, where are they going to need to get it done this time around?
Yeah, so, I first want to say that I think the way the group turned out is probably arguably the best that we could have imagined, to be honest. I think the teams that are in there, as you mentioned, Feyenoord, of Group 1, I think that was probably the best draw we could have got. So this year, I know the fans on the fan pages, social media, things like that, people are really excited. There are decent teams that we have, but they're not kind of the top tier teams. So I know a lot of the fans are looking forward to the games, especially the Lazio game, and the Atletico Madrid game away. But Rogers was building to, before he left, was building to a place where I think he wanted to make Celtic viable in Europe. And I know there's a lot of people out there that I think saw that as well. So, a lot of the fan base, even though they were upset that Rogers came back, the one glimmering hope that really brought a lot of them together was the fact that Rogers has that intelligence, that knowledge of Europe from his previous coaching positions, things like that. So, I'm looking forward to it. I think, with the people we brought in, plus, hopefully Rogers having that European experience, I'm hoping we have a better run this year. I really do. So that's, and at the same time, though, I'm hoping that doesn't hurt our domestic, run, but we'll see.
We can get to. No, we won't have a chance to. Yeah, couple of games coming up in over the weekend for over the next week for the Scottish national team. You've got a qualifier away at Cyprus coming up on Friday. Scotland's still looking, in good position to qualify at the top of their. I'm sorry, looking in good position at the top of their group in the European Championship qualifying. And then a friendly at home against England. What are you hoping to see out of this window for the Scottish national team?
Scotland to pound England, left, right, and center. That's I mean, as a Scotsman, there's like three things you wish for every Christmas, and it's, if you're playing England, to absolutely pound them, whether it's a friendly, a Euro, anything. So that just purely is absolutely what I want to see. The Cyprus game, I hope, as you say, with the way we've been playing, how we beat Spain, things like that. I'm hoping that should be, knock on wood, easy. That's kind of the curse of the Scottish team, though. Easy teams that we think we're going to beat, we lose to. So we can beat Spain one day and then the next day lose to Cyprus. So, but I'm hoping to see the same or a similar team that we used in the last few games of the Euro qualifiers, playing Cyprus and out there playing against England as well.
All right. So let's turn our attention to the other big thing that is starting on Friday. It is time for the Rugby World Cup. If I've said it once, I've said it a million times, probably on this program a couple of times. It is a doggone shame that the decision on seedings in the group draw is made almost 2 years before the tournament starts, because there are what, 4 pools. 2 of them look absolutely stacked, and then there's the other 2. So you've got in Pool A, France, Italy, Namibia, New Zealand, and Uruguay. France and New Zealand both among the top 5 teams in the world. Uruguay, not the greatest in the world, but they've played some sneaky stuff at times, especially in World Cups. Italy is Italy. I'm sorry,
but they might be feeling pretty good after the last Six Nations,
where they did pick up a win.
Yeah. And they
the
looked competitive. What did you say?
Is this a hill you want to die on?
No, I'm not saying. I'm just saying. I'm not saying. I'm just saying.
And the best part about this tournament is thank you to the rugby gods, which have decided that the thing that they're going to give us first up for the first match on of the group stage is France, New Zealand.
Yeah.
At 3:15 on Friday, right? Yeah. You can't get much better than that to start. As far as that one goes, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, that first game is going to determine pretty much who wins the group and who finishes second, because I then expect it to be a matter of how many tries, how many points, and what you can put up in a boat race against for both teams against Italy, Namibia, and Uruguay. I think, gentlemen, either one, Uruguay and Italy can both be teams that are awkward on their given day, but I don't think that either one of them necessarily have the strength to beat New Zealand or France. We have talked about the injuries that France has had to deal with, which is why if you're asking me to handicap it right now, I'd probably shade towards New Zealand winning this group with France being the runner-up. What do you think, Cam? And I know it's in France as I say that.
That is, to be honest, from what I've seen, the fervor in France has gone from a footballing country over the past couple of years to like a rugby crazy world, country. They've always had rugby there, but it's seriously coming into this World Cup, it's really taken over. France is, in the past couple of years, they've been able to deal with injury pretty well. They have a pretty deep team that they can pull from, to be honest. And their captain Dupont, young guy, but he seems to be able to manage that team, mix of veterans and young new guys really, really well. New Zealand, I will be interested to see. To be honest, my money is going to be on France for that first game. It really is. I think they're a young, explosive team with good leadership and a very, very deep roster. Not to say New Zealand isn't, but just how France has been playing the past couple of years and the fact it's in France, I think is going to be a massive, massive bonus to them.
Ed, what do you think?
Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, I know that their defense is still pretty stout, and they've had a good. For some reason, when it comes to French sports, depth is not an issue for them. So, but how can you bet against New Zealand in a World Cup? Just
at least in the group stage, you can easily bet against them when it gets to the semifinals, quarterfinals, and finals, because it seems like they're always the best team that never wins the tournament. But at least in the group stage, I will tell you though, if France goes out, beats New Zealand,
we're having a much different conversation, I think.
We're having a much different conversation. I think about the whole entire tournament, because one of the big things has been the failure of Northern Hemisphere rugby when it comes to Rugby World Cups. The only Northern Hemisphere team to ever win the Rugby World Cup is England. And this is being hosted in the Northern Hemisphere. It's being hosted in the Northern Hemisphere fall. I think that, if we see this, and we've seen the way the game has changed amongst the Six Nations competitors, if we can see a team like France go out at home and beat New Zealand, I think that it might signal to a kind of a shift in power or a shift in momentum throughout this World Cup.
Well, yeah, but then you also have teams like Japan. I'm not saying Japan's going to win, but look at the rate at which, how they've gotten better over the years. If you look at how their rankings have gone up in the past few years, they're a team that I think in 5 years could be a very dominant international playing team.
Well, let's take
if they
Japan.
Keep bringing in all the people from the Pacific Islands.
They are in Pool D, and it's Japan, Argentina, Chile, England, and Samoa. Japan fared pretty well in the World Cup when it was in Japan, and they caused a lot of upsets. I think Argentina is one of those teams that I think that a lot of people overlook until it gets to the Rugby World Cup, and then
Mhm.
all of a sudden they're there or thereabouts. Um, but if you look at it without just any knowledge of the current state of affairs and who these teams are in rugby, it's real easy to say, oh, it's England automatically. But to be honest, England has been bad recently.
Yeah.
Not like they haven't been playing well, like they have not been good. They have been bad.
We
They have
talked
been
about
losing
that in this,
games.
this winter with Six Nations, how like what is going on here? This team looked like they're completely lost, especially considering the number of players that they had from the previous round. They were still kind of a lot of the same guys. So it was shocking.
Yeah.
And they changed coaches. They've had some really bad losses to in the pre-tournament run-up. Borthwick has struggled. One would think that it's going to be two of the three of Japan, England, and Argentina that would get there, but it's real easy to see how it's like Japan and Argentina. It's even easier for me to sit here and say, like, Cam, and agree with you, like, based on the strides that they've made, based on the type of rugby that they play, based on the gains that they have made steadily over the last couple of years, I don't think it's out of the realm of the possible that Japan actually goes out and wins this entire group.
I agree. I think they're a hidden gem, and people don't understand the rate at which they've been improving over the years. They've over the years they've been marked down as a team that has something to prove, and I think they've been doing that the past couple of years. As you say, when it was hosted in Japan, we saw them play fantastic. And yes, they were the home nation, but still, I think you're absolutely right. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that we see them either win the group or come in second.
Let's skip up to Pool C, which is another one of those ones where you look at it and you would think automatically the two groups stand out, but I don't think it's going to be the same. And again, going back to Pool D, it's unfortunately for Samoa, as good as they would be at rugby, they just lack the population to put together a full roster to do it.
And the athlete drain from Samoa is just it's unbelievable. Yeah. I mean, those guys.
If this was
and you understand why.
Yeah, if this was a sevens tournament, I would put Samoa in there. And the reason why I say that is, like, you have in Group C, you have Australia and Fiji, right? There is nothing that the Fijians would love more than to beat the Aussies in rugby, right? That is like England, Scotland all over again. But the problem is that, like Samoa, they're big enough to get there, but not big enough to really hang with them because they just don't have the quality throughout.
They don't have the depth. They just don't have the depth, which is why Fiji's so dominant in sevens, because you don't need it.
Don't count them out, though. Don't count them out. They have a 0.5% chance of winning the Rugby World Cup. So you're telling me there's a chance.
You're telling me and also in this group with Australia, who has England's old coach, Eddie Jones, who has managed to do with Australia exactly what he did with England, which is somehow come in and actually make them worse. Fiji, Georgia, Portugal, and Wales. And we've talked about Wales before. Like, they are an older team.
Yeah.
What is it? Alan Wynne Jones is playing in his 9,000th Methuselah age game. Like, I mean, he's forever young, but like at some point in time, you need to look at, hey, dude, it's time to move on.
The Fiji Wales game is going to be massive, though. That's the first game of the group. That's going to be a massive game because I agree with what you're saying. With Wales aging, look, you cannot deny the talent that's coming out of Fiji. You can't deny those guys. Those guys are constantly being poached for other national teams, and you have to and we're not gonna argue for why, because we all know why. But with Wales aging like they are, could Fiji sneak by them? It's possible.
I also want to see Georgia, because Georgia's a team that a lot of people have talked about and said, okay, Georgia should replace Italy. Georgia's going to make. And then they went out to the other top European, and it's absolutely laid an egg. I think this is a chance for Georgia to really make a statement as to whether or not they actually are a legitimate team in a group that I think has really big names in Australia and Wales, but the names may not be it's more reputation, I think, than current form.
Mm-hmm.
I do hope Georgia does well in the group. I just would say they've had some over the past couple of years, some pretty big losses. The last friendly they played with Scotland, who's ranked 5th in the world. I mean, it was the sinking of a ship. Like it was an absolute blowout. So, I am hoping Georgia comes in. Come on, man.
Hey, got some competition. Watch out,
yeah, exactly. Because I think Georgia would be a good addition to the Six Nations, but I want to see them be better. They're not bad, but they just need to get a little bit better. They need to stop having these massive intermittent losses, because that's another Italy just showing its face. Sorry, Italian fans.
Instead, I would like to mention that this is the first time in a Rugby World Cup that I can remember, and I can't say that I can remember them all, and I don't go back, but so far with this, there are no North American teams in this one.
I was thinking the same thing. There's a missing of Canada and the United States, which one of them managed to kind of get in periodically, but I fear that might become more and more and more common.
Yeah. Well, that's just because I think that the South American teams, like you have this time around, you have we already talked about Argentina, but you also have Chile and Uruguay all playing in the Rugby World Cup at the expense of a couple of American teams. Let's talk about what obviously on paper and based probably on form too. The group of death: Ireland, Romania, Scotland, South Africa, and Tonga.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy that one of the top 5 teams in the world right now, one of the top 5 teams in the world right now, is not going to make the quarterfinals of this tournament.
Yeah. And it's a pretty sad group overall, actually. People discount Romania, but if you want a hard-hitting rugby team, like those are big guys. Like Romania is not one to be discounted either. This is truly a group of death. It really is.
This can go one of 2 ways. Either A, the team that comes out of this is going to be only slightly softer than a coffin nail. Or B, they're going to be so incredibly banged up that they're not going to be able to function by the time they get out of this group.
Yeah.
I mean, Ireland get Romania right out of the gate. Then they get South Africa and Scotland in back-to-back rounds before finishing up with Tonga. I mean, you could say that the schedule kind of works out a little bit in their benefit as they get a game that's going to get them into the tournament before they get the 2 big ones. And then, if they're still in the position, not that Tonga is going to be easier, but relatively speaking to the other games that they're going to have played immediately before that, yeah. The Scotland-Ireland game is just going to be basically a Six Nations game played on a neutral ground.
I could also see this turning into a situation where, depending on how other groups play out, how this group plays out, you could see the last week of games probably being kind of duds. Because that's what, they're probably going to look, if you win the group, you got, you're playing a killer either way. I could just see something like that going where there's just like, look, I'm not verbally, but you can see it on the field where they're just kind of like not trying to kill each other because they know they're both in the quarterfinal, depending on how the group plays out.
Yeah, I can see that.
Also, I wouldn't blame them at all. I wouldn't blame them at all. No. I played rugby for a half an hour one day, and I was like, "This is the most tiring game I've ever played in my life."
We've talked about Scotland and their struggles, and it's their reliance on a couple of key players, Finn Russell being chief among them. Ireland, when it comes to the Rugby World Cup, can dominate the world all the way up until the World Cup, and then conspire to find a way to fall flat on their face South Africa was a bit of a feel-good story last time around.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you had this team that was made up of what almost seemed like a bunch of cast-offs and, you know, unknown, unheralded players who were like, you know, it's Sia Khaleesi, the first black captain, Cheslin Cody, who everybody thought was too small. Faf du Plessis, who still my hero for greeting Prince William wearing a South African flag speedo. But you know, all of these guys, they came together and they put together. But it hasn't necessarily been all roses ever since. Like I think that they're coming into the game in better form than they have previously been in, and they got a big benefit when it came to the draw for this tournament because technically they're the top ranked team. But over the course of the last 2 years, like they've had some pretty big losses. They've had their fair share of struggles. So I think this is going to be a very interesting group because the teams are so competitive, but I think that when you look at the top three as we would define them in Ireland, Scotland, and South Africa, I really do think that they're pretty close in how they are, and any one of them can get an edge on the other ones.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely correct. I mean, if you look at the rankings, the percentage, how close they are, it's pretty ridiculous. I think a few mistakes in a game between South Africa, Scotland, Ireland it could really flip things. It really could. It could really change the dynamic of Pool B. I mean, Ireland is, I think, is favorites to go out as number one in the group, and then between Scotland and South Africa, I think it could come down to the wire. I really do think it could.
We also, though, saw, and again, we're going back to last time around 4 years ago, much different team. South Africa in that final against England just absolutely housed them with their physicality and things like that.
Yeah.
Ireland can be a physical team, but we've also seen they've made mistakes. We saw them. They spun their wheels a little bit in the last Six Nations, a little bit against Italy. They got their win. We've seen them spin their wheels a bit, and that's something that Ireland are not going to be able to do in this group. You don't have any give me games where you can maybe have that bad half and then hope to just close it out in the second half, right? Because even against Scotland in that game, it was close.
Yeah.
For a long time. I don't know how else to say it. It was close until it wasn't. And it looks, when you look at the scoreline, it looks very flattering to Ireland, but it was a close game for a pretty sizable portion of that. Eventually, Ireland were just able to wear Scotland down and then force the mistakes and capitalize on them. But, you can't count on a team like South Africa to wear out. You can't count on them to just give you those opportunities. And, I think there were a couple of questionable calls in that one for Ireland, too. Now what? A couple of months later, Cam, I'm not sure if that was a try.
I'm gonna keep quiet because what's done is done.
What's done is done. All right, buddy. Any last thoughts as we get ready to change course on the Rugby World Cup?
I'm hoping for Scotland to at least come second. We've got a 1.6% chance of winning the whole thing. So I'm putting all my money into that 1.6%, my life savings. So hopefully they win. Otherwise I'll be broke. But no, I'm really excited for the World Cup, and we'll have to get together and find some time to watch some of the games.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I will definitely be out this weekend to watch the opening games for Ireland and Scotland. So I think it kicks off at 9:30, so I'll be there. Can't make it a whole day because I've got a event that evening, but I'm definitely tuning in for the first one. Got my jerseys and everything ready. All right, buddy. Thanks as always for coming on and giving us a preview of the Rugby World Cup and the latest on the land of enchantment that is the world of Scottish sports.
Thank you, gentlemen.
That's always fun. I'm so excited.
It is one of my favorite World Cup tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
I just I don't know. The pool play is going to be very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to enjoy watching it. The games are coming on at times that are relatively easy to keep track of during the day, not much like when it was in Japan and they were all on late at night or super early in the morning. I just can't get past this. And because I've been paying more attention, not only to just like Ireland rugby, but just also all the other rugby playing nations, I'm a little bit more familiar with them than I have been in the past. And it just how they did this draw bothers me because it's like you have so much unbalance in between groups A and B and C and D. You know, like right based on current form. And it just baffles me that you couldn't say, you know what we're not gonna do is we're not gonna do the draw until a year or 6, 7 before.
Yeah, I mean, at least wait till
I
the
don't
last
think it
Six
changes
Nations.
anything.
Yeah, just wait till the last Six Nations and do it then. You know,
And even as we talk about the Six Nations, like we watch the Six Nations, there is a similar tournament in the Southern Hemisphere.
absolutely, definitely.
We just don't watch it, but it happens.
It happens, yeah.
You know, or wait until after the spring tests.
And we don't watch it because it's not on Peacock.
Year.
It's not on Peacock. If it was on Peacock, I'd watch it.
Yeah. I mean, I'd watch it if I could, but I can't. So it just baffles me that they did this, and I don't understand the reasoning, the logic behind doing it so early on in the preparation process to set these groups up, because this is what you have. You know, it'd be like them drawing the World Cup 2 years in advance. Like, think about how much teams change over the course of 2 years.
Absolutely.
And we're talking about form, development. This isn't just injuries. This is development. This is form. This is players retiring.
Right. I was going to say, and plus you have 19-year-olds who are now 21. You know, that's a vast, you have 23-year-olds who are now 25. People fill out, it changes.
I don't think realistically Marcus Smith, who's going to be a key component to the England setup, was really not a factor when they made the draw. He was just kind of this guy that they were thinking about bringing in. And although he hasn't necessarily developed the way a lot of people wanted him to, he's now going to be a major factor in this team and a guy who could alter the fortunes of the entirety of that roster. And you're not accounting for things like this. You know, I think Ireland could have been with a couple of retirements. Why am I drawing a name on it, blank on it, the guy's name right now? But
yeah, whatever.
Oh yeah, it's Johnny Sexton. Why I knew his name was Johnny.
Oh yeah.
If Johnny Sexton had retired or had a career in like a major injury or something in the last 2 years, Ireland's a completely different team. And I'm not saying that they're a one-man team by any stretch of the imagination, but so much of what they do comes through him right now, probably because he's your fly half, but that's what happens. And the captain, that you're just, it's just baffling to me. It's like drawing, to me, it'd be like drawing the NCAA tournament seeds at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Like we already decided that we don't need to play the games. We already are just going to name Duke a number 1 seed.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And then they go, 20 and 11.
So at this point in time, we need to bring in our good friends for our last segment. It is time for Professor Matt and Chelsea Mike, the Matt and Mike Show. Matt, how's it going, my friend?
Doing all right, Mike. Yourself?
Can't complain too much. Been better, been worse. I just had a really good conversation. I think that you heard part of about the Rugby World Cup. I know that we're very much looking forward to it. Um, Talked a little bit about Arsenal and Manchester United, um, the end of the transfer window. So great to be joined by you, Mike. How's it going?
Stop it. You know how it's going.
On the one hand, Chelsea are struggling, but on the other hand, the Phils are in the wild card race. And did you know, in my show prep, Mike, I was looking up different things, and I found out that the Philadelphia Union are the highest ranked club team in MLS in the CONCACAF rankings. So that's got to be a net positive too.
Yeah, it's a net positive, except there's that one team that's got Leo Messi.
Yeah,
and,
and the rank. Yeah,
and the rankings just might not matter. And it's like the rankings might not matter. The standings might not matter. I mean, provided Miami can get all the way up to the playoffs, which is not going to be an easy task. It's not, they were the worst team in the league, but you know, hey, but it's the start of the NFL gridiron football season this year. So go Birds.
Yes.
Somebody give us
Birds.
hope. Somebody give me hope anyway.
Yes, those of us who are Birds fans, Matt, I know you're a Dolphins fan, so I don't know what to tell you. Let's hope. That's what I was going to say. Let's hope Tua can keep his brain in his head. So where do we start? Before we talk some Eastern European stuff, at the top of the show, we talked a little bit about the transfer window, and the feeling amongst us was, and I want to get your opinions on this. From my perspective, instead, and G agreed, it kind of went out with a whimper. Like deadline day didn't have that much drama to it. I don't know, Matt. How did you would have been in a position where you had some of what could have potentially been the most drama, and still maybe with this potential move for Mo Salah, and we can talk about that in a second. But I just kind of felt like it went out with a whimper. How did you feel?
Yeah, it's funny when we sort of got back and running after our hiatus, we were saying there wasn't any action. Then all of the big moves seemed to be condensed in that 2-week period. And then there wasn't much that last week. I mean, we got the Ryan Gravenberch deal over the line. But other than that, there weren't any major incomings or outgoings, at least in terms of the EPL.
So, Mike, Chelsea signed on deadline day. Chelsea signed another 15 players for approximately $3 billion, none of whom I actually know. We probably will never see. But yeah, that happened. So it was, pretty typical quiet evening in West London for Chelsea.
Well, as usual, it was a great night for Fabrizio Romano, who seems to be the exclusive target of Chelsea leagues. They got Cole Palmer. I kind of don't really know exactly where he fits, but I wait to be shown. Yeah, I think the bulk of our transfer movement had happened to the tunes of billions of pounds before the deadline.
I kind of alluded to it. There's still this out there. The Saudi League does not, their transfer window doesn't end for a couple of days.
And apparently, there's some fuzziness. It changed at one point in the last week and a half, at least according to their website.
Who knows? Apparently, they can make up rules however they want to. At last I checked, it was the 7th, but that could have changed now. I'm pretty sure that it just got later as they try and make this happen. But a world record deal mooted for Mo Salah, who has said, at least publicly, that he doesn't want to go to the Saudi Pro League. But At what point, Matt, do we get into the money where it's kind of like, okay, yeah, law of diminishing returns. I've got a 30-plus-year-old Mo Salah, and this is way too much money to pass up.
If this was earlier in the window, a month ago even, I think we very seriously consider this because that's a lot of money, and that's a lot of money that can go into this rebuild. The fact that it's so late in the day, and the only and look, I've come on this program and said I don't think you can actually replace like prime Mo Salah. That person doesn't exist at the moment. I don't know who that would be. But even just replacing the body, the only right winger we have, or guy who can really play the right, is a 19-year-old Scotsman in Ben Doak, who I quite like, but he's not a ready-made replacement. I don't think this happens now. But keep your eyes on this space next summer, because I would not be shocked at all if we can get someone. So, if there is a plan, then I think this could possibly happen. But no, I don't think anything's gonna happen in the near term. And Salah himself has came out, and while I don't doubt that he would not go to Saudi Arabia, I don't think he at this moment is wanting to necessarily go there.
I don't know. What do you think, Stead? Is there a point where you get to enough money that they lay the money, they back up the Brinks truck, and you just say, hey, damn it, yeah, that's just too good to refuse?
For a guy who's 31, absolutely.
Yeah, for Fenway Sports Group, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely you do. Absolutely you do. I mean, look, if you had something that you were waiting to happen, I would understand that. But you've won everything you can win. You just haven't done it multiple times, but you've won everything. So I really think that it would be idiotic to pass that up. That just wouldn't. We saw how Spurs almost screwed this up. They almost screwed this up. And luckily for them that they didn't, and they're actually playing pretty well right now. And yes, it is great to have that one pivotal player that can do so many great things for you. It's also great to be able to bring in two guys who can shore up some holes that your team may have to make it to the point where you're now just one player away. And you don't need to bring in a player of that type of caliber. And as we also have seen, a change of scenery for a couple of seasons can work very well for players. Maybe there's a kid out there who's 28, bring him in, and he can come and give you a few really solid seasons. But I just think I think it's wise for an organization to say we're not selling this iconic player that we have just to make it seem like they are all in and everything like that. But don't be stupid. Sell the damn player. And I know you agree with me.
Yeah, the thing is the timing.
Mm-hmm.
Again, if this was a month ago, and let's say Moussa Diaby was still out there,
mm-hmm.
you do this, you bring him in, you see what happens. It's just this came so late in the day. But that's what I'm saying, I don't think he gets moved at this window. But don't be shocked, June 1st of next year, Salah to Saudi Arabia, 200 mil.
Mike, talking about transfer windows, we can safely say at best the jury's still out, but it looks like business has not necessarily gone well at Chelsea insofar as the return on investment. How much longer can they continue to spend the money the way that they are spending with the returns looking like what they're looking like currently?
Well, a couple of things. For one thing, actually, unlike Liverpool and unlike Man United, Chelsea were pretty much almost net neutral in their summer spending. So for all the high profile spending and all the money, what we sold out brought back in what we brought in. So the shelling out, I mean, we're living off of old shelling out, and we somehow nearly made back what we made back on Kai Havertz. Kai Havertz is dead. Worst finisher in all of football.
Bro, we have no idea why he's there. None of us do. You should see our chat.
I don't either.
We sound like a bunch of Chelsea fans. We're just like, what? What does he do? Why is he on the field?
You pay us $60 million
What is he doing?
for him?
What is he doing? And
I mean,
now the rumor is that him and Arteta are just thick as thieves together every night. And it's like, what is going on? It's weird. It's weird. Havertz is not gelling with the squad. I don't know why he's starting. I don't know why, especially when you have a healthy ESR on the bench. Why is he starting? I don't know. The whole Havertz thing is just, it's weird. The whole thing is weird. You can stop teasing us about Nicola Pepe and now start teasing us about Kai Havertz because that's working. At least
Well,
Pepe
I think
made a little bit of sense.
Nicola Pepe's leaving too, supposedly. But
what I'm saying is, like, we got 60 million for Kai Havertz.
Mm-hmm.
Like
65, yeah. No, I get it. Why? I don't know why.
Yeah, why?
Yeah, but
Everybody was like, what?
But
I understand this, and I get the idea, like, incomings are prorated over the life of the contract, while outgoings count immediately. But it's still what has been spent over the last 3 transfer windows is exceeded by what has been brought in. What has been spent exceeds what has gone out, right? We're talking crazy money, like well over $1 billion that they spent building this team over the course of 3 consecutive transfer windows. And I'm sorry, they have not sold $1 billion worth of player.
No, all right, they haven't. So I understand the philosophy. I'm reading a book right now called Soccernomics, and the first part's about transfers.
I have that book.
And
I do too.
And I think that they've probably read the book too well, because what they're bringing in are players between the ages of 19 and 21. They say there's diminishing returns on players, especially those above 25. You're going to get out of them less than you will get over the life. So the philosophy of Chelsea is to bring in young players, to put them on long contracts, and to build a thing that will grow long term. And the challenge for Chelsea fans is to kind of take the pain of Nottingham Forest 1, Chelsea 0 for a little while, but there's only so long that that's going to work. Eventually, that they're going to have to start putting results out there. I mean, we can talk about the match more if you want to, but as an overall,
it was
but
Chelsea. Nottingham Forest 1, Chelsea 0. You had a striker in Jackson who just missed. It was a complicated chance, but it was a clear chance that he missed. Moises Caicedo has had 2 pretty poor performances. We said at the beginning of the season that this is a holdover from last season where they struggled to score goals. Guess what they're struggling to do again? Score goals.
Yeah, I mean, Nottingham Forest did to Chelsea what was done to Chelsea all last year with different players, right? It was park the bus, make them. I mean, the figures are astounding. It's like 75% possession, 77, 713 complete passes from Chelsea, 21 shots, but only 2 on target, right? They were playing Spanish football out there with meaningless possession. And Nottingham Forest figured out what teams figured out against Chelsea last year. Just park the bus, break out, and their defense will crack. I mean, there's a lot of questions about why we're playing 3 in the back right now when Poch's famous formation is a Christmas tree, and they have all the pieces of the Christmas tree, and they're not playing the Christmas tree. I don't know the answer.
I think he did play, though. I do think that for times at PSG, he did play 3 at the back.
Well, okay, but it's obviously not working at Chelsea. They need more offensive presence up front, and they're going to have to be slightly more vulnerable at the back to do that. Now, the rumors in the Chelsea talking circles is that they're doing it to protect Silva. But so my question is, why is he out there then? Like, if Thiago Silva is 39 years old. I mean, he's no spring chicken. He's a great leader. He's one of the few players on Chelsea above the age of 23 who start. But if he can't handle responsibility, then shouldn't be out there. It's quite simply that. Formation questions aside, Chelsea still don't have a person who can finish when they're parking the bus. I think that person, the person who can generate those opportunities, is Mykhailo Mudryk. Mykhailo Mudryk hasn't been starting, and Raheem Sterling, actually, who's shown that he can do that this year so far. But I think they need those 2 guys out there. Mudryk needs to start. He needs to be able to play when they're not parking the bus because he's best in free space. He's not a good finisher. We know that, but if he can generate chances for Jackson and Sterling, that could be very beneficial. They're not starting him. They paid him so much. I mean, I know it's the pieces of the puzzle keep shifting, but Poch has got to figure it out. At least do better than losing to Nottingham Forest. And I mean, again, Jackson hits that shot that's wide open and doesn't airmail it from 2 yards out. It's still a draw against Nottingham Forest. We need better creativity up front and better finishing.
And who's in a worse position right now, Chelsea or Manchester United?
Chelsea.
Get the hell.
I'm sorry.
Manchester, I mean, sky is falling over.
Now,
Chicken Little over there. Oh my.
No, are you talking about? No, that's actually being an objective question. Like, on the one hand, Chelsea have you have players by the loads of them. The question is, can Pochettino get the most out of what he has? You talked about the sheer number of 19, 21-year-olds, and the names that you can rattle off on a Chelsea roster are kind of insane. I might have spent a little bit more money on defense and possibly goalkeeper, but there's definitely a lot of player to be found there.
I think the answer to that question was actually quite fluid. The only reason why I can say that now is because Arsenal beat Man U, Nottingham Forest beat Chelsea. So that's the only reason why I can say Chelsea. But I honestly think though that again, Man United has players, Chelsea has players. All it takes is a good stretch of 5 games, and we're having a much different conversation.
I think that they
no. Mike, your team, Manchester United, lost to Arsenal, who, when the stakes aren't high, when it doesn't matter, are the best team ever. And they, and they showed that
this isn't actually about being a Manchester United fan as much as it is like a legitimate thing. All right. You have a
bona fide finisher in Rashford. We don't have. And that for that reason and that reason alone, you're in a better position.
One would argue though that on the wings, definitely a little bit more polished player on the wings.
Look, I thought Sterling looked good against Forest.
Yeah.
I did. I thought he looked very. And
I think you would rather
I thought he was
have,
out there on an island by himself. I was like, you got to help the guy
Sterling's
some
the
way.
only
He
one
can't
out
do
there.
it by himself.
Sterling's the only one out there looking good for
Absolutely.
Chelsea.
He's
That
the only one out
then-
there that's giving you effort.
Yeah,
jump in, Matt.
that almost cancels. I was about to say, Rashford's a pure finisher, which you don't have. But like Sterling and Mudryk almost cancel out because I wasn't here for the Arsenal Man United segment. But Mike, have we reached the point where you guys are starting to ask, what is Anthony for?
We've been past the point where we're asking
Okay,
what is
all right.
Anthony for, and it's the same thing all the time. It's like we can sit at this point in time. The only reason why Anthony starts is because Anthony is the only winger that he has that is left-footed, and if Garnacho is left-footed, he would start. Garnacho is actually something. It's easy to look at Garnacho and see where the path to development is, whereas Anthony's still. And although Anthony's still relatively young, it's the lack of discernible growth in his game from game to game, from match to match, from week to week, from month to month, from season to season. Like, I'm still seeing him do the same things and make the same mistakes that I saw very early on that he was doing last year. And we can all talk about it because we've all seen wingers who just consistently make the wrong decision. When it's time to run at a guy, they pass to no one. When it's time to pass, they lack the vision to see when it's time to dribble, they shoot. Like, anytime Anthony has a choice to make of one of three things, you can assume pretty much with almost 100% accuracy, if there's a wrong decision to make, that is the exact one that he will make.
Mike, I have an even bigger question. Is Anthony even going to be back? Can they keep putting him in the team with these allegations?
Yeah.
I mean, on the one hand, you see the social media allegations and stuff like that, and I've said what I need to say about that. But listen, look, the league is the Premier League as a whole is pretty forgiving when it comes to abuse allegations, because I think that there are guys in every team that has certain things that have been alleged against them who consistently play. Do I think that would this give Erik ten Hag, if he wanted it, a very valid excuse to drop him? Sure. The problem is, if he drops him, who do you have?
Well, that's a question for you. Who do you have?
You
That
play.
Used to play right wing for Dortmund, but he's been more at the left.
He's been all right. I think that you have a better chance of seeing Anthony play right now than you do Jadon Sancho play after all of that stuff that went on after this and you can look at a situation, and to be honest, I think they're both wrong. I think that Erik ten Hag occasionally hides behind his Dutch directness a bit too much and uses what he considers to be like, I'm just going to say exactly what I think and what I'm saying, and I mean exactly what I say when he answers questions. And that was what he did when he was asked, like, I dropped him because I don't feel like he was performing well. And Sancho got rightfully frustrated because I can also see a guy who I think might be doing everything that he possibly can in training. And it's like, what more do you want from me? Because one thing that has been happening is you can start possibly to see where Sancho feels like he's being slightly differently graded than a player like Anthony. Like, what is it that Anthony does in training consistently that makes it so that he is almost undroppable versus what does Jadon Sancho not do? Because certainly,
wrong, Sancho is pre-Tim Hog, right?
Yeah, other than he's not Ten Hag's boy. But is it like you're not my, so is he getting graded differently? Because I think when it comes to the actual play on the field, they're at least equivalent. Sancho has actually scored a couple of goals. I think he actually gives you something in the course of a game that Anthony does not. But it seems like no matter what Sancho does, he can't get past Anthony. And no matter what Anthony does, like I guess he has pictures of Ten Hag that he doesn't want seen, or he has like hacked into the family trust fund and has all the bank codes or something, because it's like he can't do anything to get himself out of that team. They dropped Garnacho, not Sancho, Anthony, and so were you to drop him, what would you do? Okay, could you put Bruno Fernandes in a more advanced position in a midfield when Mount is healthy, with Mount and Eriksson and Casemiro and Fernandes and Rashford and Hoyland? Yeah, that might work. Actually, that might actually work better, because I think it would put less pressure to cover more ground off of Christian Eriksen. It might actually make us a stronger team if you did something like that. Could you give Sancho a shot? Could you start Garnacho? Could you look down in the youth system and see, like, what do you still have down there? I know Alanga's gone, and I think Amad Diallo. I don't know if he's out on loan or anything, but they have young wingers ostensibly in the youth system that they might be able to promote. If you were that concerned about Jadon Sancho, why did you let yourself get rid of Amad Diallo? Why did you get rid of Anthony Alanga and Facundo Palestri, all of whom could have played? Right? So whether or not Anthony comes, I think Anthony might actually be some. Getting rid of Anthony might actually, for a little bit, letting him sit down, might actually be addition by subtraction. So, yeah, that's my two cents on it. Sorry, did not mean to go on that long about that.
Words there.
Hey, Matt and Chelsea, Mike, open the door. Mike, all you had to do was walk through it, brother.
Yeah, it's way better than talking about my side.
That's all he's doing. He's deflecting.
Yeah, exactly. You got me figured out, Sted.
Well, I deflected for a couple of months, and as much as I like to joke about kicking people when they're down, it's not all that fun. Like, how much can you say when your team is struggling? Like, we suck and we know we do. Let's go back to Liverpool. Like, we talked at length about the need to rebuild the midfield. Matt, that's exactly what they did.
Yeah, it's weird. I was talking to somebody over the weekend, and they were like, "Well, what grade would you give this transfer window?" And it's hard to pretend that the Caicedo saga didn't happen, because it did, and the egg is still on our face, and it's cooking. Although Caicedo's not looked particularly good, but we still look stupid. But I said I'd give it a B, because what was our problem last year? I came on this program time after time and said we have no eights. They don't exist. Well, now we have a bunch of eights, two of which, because remember, the shine on Ryan Gravenberch has kind of faded. But this time last year, he was one of the more highly rated young midfielders in Europe. He was being spoken in the same breath as Bellingham. Now, Bellingham had lapped him in terms of, advance his development. But, Chelsea's boy, Tommy Tuchel, didn't like Gravenberch, so he didn't play. So how can you develop if you don't play? I think in him, and I found out the real spelling of his last name. Hungarian's a bitch. the name is pronounced Dominic Szoboszlai.
Oberschlag.
Szoboszlai.
It's actually reverse Polish, Matt. So if SZ is S, whereas my last name starts with SZ and says sh, SZ in Hungarian is
it's
it's reverse
weird,
Polish.
though. But so Szoboszlai, I think we have two really. I think in a year or two we're gonna have two really outstanding eights, and I have to be honest, Szoboszlai, he's been, other than Allison, our best player so far this season.
Well, it was his goal that got you started against Aston Villa over the weekend, and
it's not even just that. It's like we let Gini Wijnaldum walk 2 seasons ago, and as it's turned out, Gini Wijnaldum has devolved into a former person. But Gini is one of my favorite all-time Liverpool players because all of the little things he did that was so integral that we sort of took for granted. Why I love Szoboszlai is that he's got that Genie ball retention quality about him, which, by the way, parents, if you want your kids to be good midfielders, have them train with giant rubber bands. It's the most Eastern European thing on the planet. When they're really goddamn small, giant rubber bands. Because apparently that's what Dominic's dad did when he was like a 5-year-old. It's like rubber bands. But also, you mentioned that goal. Mike, when was the last time a Liverpool midfielder was a genuine goal scoring threat?
You got me on that one. I mean,
like maybe
no,
one healthy season we got out of Oxlade-Chamberlain.
Maybe. I mean, but even at that point in time, he was a shadow of what he had been and a imitation of what we thought he was going to
be. Yeah, it so far so good. The reason I give it a B, besides we looked really foolish, is the DM situation is still sort of a mystery. We have Endo. He is my friendo. And I feel sorry for the SOB because this guy has come in. He had no training, gets brought into a game where we're down to 10 men, and then the following week he starts. And after 20 minutes, we have 10 men, and he must be thinking, wow, what the hell did I sign up for? Do they ever play with 11 guys? Really?
He also, by the way, he was signed right on the back of the embarrassment with Chelsea.
Yes.
And his name being so close to Enzo makes it seem like he was Dollar General. Like we had to go buy the Aldi brand of midfield.
It's so weird. Apparently he's been a club target for years, and if you look at his profile, and by the way, Byron Robb is Endo. I think he's like secretly Endo's agent because whenever he gets brought up in the chats, Byron Robb's like, good midfielder, press resistant, seen him in Germany, and it's just like, okay, Rob. And I've seen glimpses of that actually. He looks like a guy who's just gotten here. Is it ideal? Hell no, it's not ideal. But I'm willing up until January to see what we can see with a combo of Endo. It's easy to forget because he's been hurt. Steven Bisetic is still a real boy. He exists. And I think he's going to be really good. I just don't want to screw up his development. And Gravenberch is kind of an 8-6 hybrid. So if you're doing that kind of inverted with Trent, he can probably take that role. I still think there are a couple pieces missing. This isn't a team that can win the league. I'm going to say that right now.
But it's in a better place than it was at the start of the window.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you told me we would take 10 of 12 points from our first 4 matches, that included Chelsea away, Newcastle away, where they don't lose anymore. And a Villa team, granted they have some injuries, who I quite like. Yeah, let's hope there are no injuries during the international break, and let's see what happens. Like I said in the chat after the Newcastle match, we're not back, but we're going to be a problem.
Matt and Mike, our mutual friend, lawyer Dave, has decided that he's going to follow Aston Villa.
I am responsible for that because
you are partially responsible for that.
He messaged me and he was like, "What is a team that isn't your team, Mike's team, and the other Mike's team that is fun to watch and doesn't play like satanic football?" And I'm like,
you didn't say Arsenal.
No, but he was sort of like under the radar, and I'm like, okay, I think
well, he had been rooting for Everton.
I was gonna say, at least you didn't say Everton. At least you didn't say Everton.
Professor Matt, like lawyer Dave and I, bit of a rivalry kind of is. Where you should have pointed him. You know where you should have pointed him.
Well,
and they're on the South Coast, and I hate them. And I hate them.
We might have said Brighton, and I wish I had thought about that when he asked. But it is entertaining, to go through this with him. But every day he wakes up and he watches the games, and he's been pretty dedicated to watching the games every weekend.
He's been communicating with me too, right down to whatever 6-pack of British beer he can in Texas.
But he's watching the games, and he's like, in his opinion, every time they leave, they lose a center back. Because he's like, oh crap, this is Newcastle all over again. They've scored a goal in the first 5 minutes and we're already down a center back. Like, where can we get replacements? Do they have a center back factory? So, we'll give him a chance later on to come on and ask all the questions that he wants to about this, because it has been very interesting. Trying to explain the nuances of like Aston Villa's foray into the Europa Conference League.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the weird selling points too. It's like this team was good, and they won in Europe, and now they're sort of back. Like it's funny. Mike brings up Brighton, and I was like, I thought about that actually briefly, but then I was like, that's too much of a hipster team for lawyer Dave. Like,
it's a good point. They're very trendy.
They're
not
very
a trendy kind of guy.
Yeah, he's Mr. Tradition to the point.
He's old. He's old fashioned.
Where I'm like, man, you are a baseball reactionary. You want forms and fucking, the plates are still like, marble.
All I got to say about lawyer Dave, and I love him. He is my best friend. He was the best man at my wedding, but he still wears his crew socks pulled up to his calves.
Well, so do I, but that's the way the trendy kids are wearing them nowadays. It's come back.
But if you stick with the fashion,
I bet his socks are white, aren't they? Not like
if
they ain't black.
If you stick with something long enough, it's going to come back in style. All right, gentlemen. Tick, tick, tick. It's getting towards the end of this affair for us. So we didn't get a chance to talk a little bit about Eastern Europe and the lower leagues, but I will mostly because I went on that rant, but I will make it a point to get back there next week.
Wait, let me just, because it's the international break, Michael, because it's the international break, let me point everyone to ESPN Plus this weekend at 7:30. You've got Bradford City. You've got Grimsby Town. You've got League Two football on your telly. Go ahead and watch it.
Kelsey, Mike, too. Just so you know, I want to give you your own channel under the Two Guys umbrella. So whenever you want to start doing your lower league shorts again, please let me know and give them as many as you want.
And we'll get a dedicated
channel that only is going to post that. It's going to be awesome.
I have one Chelsea Mike X point too, international break related and weirdly Eastern European related. Qualifiers for the Euros begin again on Thursday. We'll talk more about this next week. All I'm going to say is watch Kazakhstan.
Yes. You have been hyping up.
They play Northern Ireland. They have 9 points already. If they can get 4 points out of those two matches, the men from the step are through.
Hey, is that going to be on One Football?
Yeah, it should be. No, it's FS1. It's Fox has the qualifier.
That might actually be a good one.
That might be on TV then. Yeah. Is that gonna be on regular TV?
Kazakhstan, Finland Thursday, Kazakhstan, Settler Ireland, I think Monday or Tuesday.
Matt, can you throw it in the chat if it's on? Just throw it in the chat.
I will. I
Okay.
most certainly will.
Awesome.
All right, so we got a lot of stuff, but Mike, no, we are not tuning in for championship and lower league football on Saturday because it is the start of the Rugby World Cup, and there are certain things that are even more interesting than the lower leagues. I'm sorry.
Once every 4 years or a mid-table League Two match. What are you picking, baby?
Hey,
you know what I'm picking.
I'd pick if you give us your updates, Chelsea Mike. Come on, man. We need the updates.
Yes,
I need the lower league report, brother.
I'm picking Ireland and Romania. Sorry. All right, gentlemen, it's been fun. I want to thank G for coming on, opening up the show with us and covering a little bit of Spain, a little bit of Arsenal, Manchester United, and a few other things. Definitely great to talk to Celtic Cam about the Scottish national team, the old firm, and what's going on elsewhere in the in the land of enchantment. And then especially going through the Rugby World Cup and doing our preview with him, and then ending up with the Mike and Matt show and the various hijinks that go along with that. Always a big shout out to producer Stead for keeping the trains running on time. So thanks again to the cast of the Too Many Guys Stalker Show. We did all right this week, and we'll try and do again next week, better next week.